Welcome to Resilient in Business, a podcast where we dive into insights, strategies, and systems to help you build scalable, thriving businesses. My name is Jad Atwe. I'm an engineer, an entrepreneur, and a business coach. Our intention from this show is to provide value and inspire entrepreneurs to keep pushing forward no matter the challenges. If you enjoy the content, subscribe and help us spread the message. Now, let's get into today's episode. I'm very excited for today's episode. Today, I'm joined here with Brittany Smith. Brittany is an expert in productivity, ADHD, and she's the founder of a company called Conquer Consulting, which helps people in that matter. Thank you for joining us, Brittany. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get technical and into the ADHD stuff, why Conquer Consulting? Where did this name come from?
My last name's Smith. You cannot name a business after yourself with Smith. It's like the old saying, divide and conquer, but it's devise and conquer. And that was just a shorter top level domain I could afford.
Yeah.
Let's conquer, not consulting.
Makes sense. How did your why ADHD? How did your career journey evolve to today?
So when I was in undergrad, I was already double majoring in psychology and child development when my brother called me and he said, "Hey, so it turns out I have ADHD and we're basically the same person. So you should go look into this." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Because like many people, I had a very incorrect idea of what ADHD was, a very narrow view compared to what it actually is. And so as I was transitioning into my cognitive neuroscience graduate program, I would read about brains like mine in order to try to get better at doing the things I was trying to do. I was looking for cheat codes, basically, on my own brain. And so then when I finished and I had kind of gotten burned out on academia, not science, but academia, I was like, well, I got to do something. And I had been diving into a lot of technology and a lot of productivity techniques to basically get myself through graduate school. And it was actually my ADHD coach who said, you do a lot of helpful things in our group. Maybe you should also try doing that. You could incorporate your productivity and technology stuff into it. And so I did.
So if you want to start by defining it, I mean, some people say ADD, some people say ADHD. Is there a difference? And what's your definition?
Technically in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders is ADHD with subtypes. I use ADD when it is easier to say.
For people that don't know, what's ADHD? How can we describe it?
So it's very complicated, it turns out, which has been part of the problem and why we had a boom in diagnoses especially in adults over the pandemic, because a lot of people didn't realize how many of their coping skills were reliant on physically going into the office or physically going to a coffee shop. So we did have an uptick. There's a lot of people who will struggle without additional structure. And so not having that going into an office or a coffee shop, some people work way better with other people around. And so some of those things didn't work. The interesting thing about ADHD is that it is so diverse that it can look like a lot of different things in different people, which is how it hides sometimes. I like to think of it as extra human. So all of those things, all those foibles that are like, oh, only a human could screw that up. I keep forgetting my keys. We do more of that. But also when I think of like Doctor Who, when he's impressed with the human race, is like, oh, so creative and you do these amazing things. We also do more of that. So just human, but more.
For me, I self-diagnosed myself with ADHD, and it's because I can't concentrate on one thing for a long time. Like that's the multiple interests, can't focus for a long period of time. It's been interesting. Sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's not. What do you describe it? Yeah.
I mean, so there are things we can do to improve the focus. If it is something that you are interested in, we can sometimes harness that better. But there's also issues with decision making and decision fatigue and overthinking stuff sometimes. You get a real creative brain and sometimes it just comes up with 1,000 ways to do something. And so then figuring out the where do I start can become an issue. But when we have something that we're interested in and we have a clear path forward where we're not as interrupted by those things, we could focus amazingly. That's why I'd have like this mom say, oh yeah, I don't think my husband has ADHD because he can focus on video games. That's not, that doesn't count. When there's something that you're interested in that's a good fit for your brain, often we can. But then there's sometimes, I love what I do day to day. I do not love answering emails. And so I do need to come up with tricks to get through the email part of my job, even if I love the main part. And so sometimes there's like a side part of something we love that's a struggle. So we may need specific tools or tricks or workarounds, or sometimes having someone to give it to instead. If we can do that, that's sometimes an option.
It sounds like the term is an umbrella for different problems. What you're saying, it's specific to everyone. And so do you think, like, what's the step number one? Someone finds themselves, okay, we have a problem. Should they go do a test to see how severe the situation is? Should they take medicine? What's the process that someone should go through in order to identify and understand what's the right step for them?
There are formal tests, and they're pretty good at catching it from a psychologist. That's like the official way, but it is also really expensive and rarely covered by insurance. And many doctors do not feel it is necessary to prescribe medications. And so if you're somebody who's like, I think this is me, I don't necessarily need to go through all the testing. I mean, you do if you're going to like ask for accommodations on a standardized test. That would be a good reason to go through all of that. If your school requires it, if somebody requires it, if it's your doctor that requires it, just get a different doctor. But if it's somebody that requires, sorry. Like I have a friend she's not drug seeking, but she needs treatment and doesn't want to pay $2,000 for testing that insurance will not reimburse for. And so I'm like, you just need a different doctor that doesn't require it sounds awful because it does sound like drug seeking, but that's a ridiculous hoop to make somebody jump through. And so first, if you think it's you and you don't need the elaborate testing for a specific reason, step one is talk to your doctor. Now, people like me who work in productivity or ADHD coaching or other executive functioning coaching, we don't actually need a diagnosis to work with somebody. So if somebody just thinks they do and they feel like they're ready for coaching, you do not necessarily need, like, I do not need somebody's formal diagnosis to work with them. I'm a productivity coach. Also, we're going to work on finding ways to get you to do the thing that you wish you were doing. And it's going to be personalized to you no matter what diagnosis you might have.
Yeah. I want to get more into that, but before, medication is a second part of it. Do you find that medication is the answer, and or is it the quick fix?
Medication is a thing that can help people, does not work for everyone. When it does work, it can be really helpful, but it is not a magic bullet. It does not fix everything. It doesn't help us strategize better necessarily. It is really, really useful in the specific narrow band it is useful for. And there are multiple types of medication. Like we tend to think about the focus aspects of ADHD first. It's the most obvious. And the medications that treat those aspects of ADHD are the most effective medications in all of psychopharmacology. It's not a little bit, it's drastic. If that's what you need, it's a good thing to have. I don't need to take a lot of Adderall, that's the medication I have, very regularly. But I went to this conference and they're talking about deep stuff and I'm sitting there all day and it's not interactive. Guess what? All of a sudden, I need my higher dose again to get through that specific instance, right? And that's the great thing about stimulants is you don't have to take it every day. You don't have to take the same amount every day. Don't take more without discussing it with your doctor, especially if you've never taken that amount before. But you don't have to do it the same all the time. You can be like, today I need it, tomorrow I don't, and it's fine. It's like, unless you are the person who gets headaches when you don't drink your coffee. It's a stimulant like that. You can decide today I need 2 cups and tomorrow I won't have any, and it's fine. It is not the only type of medication. There are others, but I always want to make sure people know about, because one of the symptoms of ADHD that it's growing in knowledge, but it's not all there yet, is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So you might see RSD as the acronym somewhere. And it's that thing where we get feedback from somebody and it stings like a little bit more than it feels like it should, or when we're worried about getting bad feedback from somebody, so we don't ever want to reply to that email, or where there's that task that we feel so bad about not having done already that it kind of feels like it's yelling at us, so we don't want to look at it. All of those sort of like negative self feelings, or ruminating about that one conversation where you said something bad like 2 years ago, that whole group of symptoms is a part of ADHD too that gets less attention because it's just not as obvious. It feels like, oh, it's just me. And that is treated by a different class of medication if they work for you.
Hey, a quick commercial break. This podcast is brought to you by Business Optimization Partners, a firm that specializes in helping entrepreneurs systemize their business and transform it into a professionally managed asset that is scalable and easy to operate. If you wish to learn more, download the guide to running a professionally managed business that's available in the description. Now, back to the episode.
This is interesting because the last few things that you described, it's more related to someone being sensitive. It never occurred to me that this could be also ADHD.
I have met people who do not have rejection sensitivity, but I can count them on one hand.
What's the other aspect of it is productivity. How can we increase productivity and focus? So my question is this: what's the process at what stage do people feel that it's time to seek Brittany for help, and what's the process that you walk them through to be better, more productive?
I wish I were getting this thing done in a more effective way or at all, and it's not getting done. There's something I wish were happening and it's not happening. And I've put in some effort at it. Usually people don't go if they haven't tried anything else yet because it's expensive and, again, not covered by insurance. I've been trying to do this thing. And by the way, you do see a lot of ADHD in entrepreneurs because it takes a little bit of risk taking and adventure seeking to be willing and able to do something like that. So that's all you need is like, I'm trying to do this thing and it's not happening. And what we do is going to vary by person. I'm wrapping up a course right now. Like if you're looking for general advice, there are places to go do that. But if what you need is something tailored to you, there really isn't a replacement for one-on-one coaching for that. Like I need strategies that are specific to me. One-on-one coaching is really the place to go. And what we're going to do is talk about what is it you want to have happening and look at what's getting in the way, and what an experienced coach can bring to that is like these other people where this got in the way. We could bring in ideas of, oh, this is something that I've seen before. Has that happened for you? Is that one of the things that's maybe getting in your way? So we're going to try to find specifically what's getting in your way with reference to other similar people who might have had something similar. Oh, and sometimes there's a new problem that I've never tackled, and I love that. But it does mean it's going to be more trial and error, right? And we're going to try to find something that works for you. And the reason sometimes it works with a coach that it may not work on our own is there's someone else who's going to ask how it went. So instead of, I tried a little bit of this and I tried a little bit of this, but I didn't stick to anything for a whole week. I'll see it with task systems like, oh, I've got some of my to-dos on stickies. Some of them are written in a notebook. Some of them are in 3 different apps. And because I couldn't decide on just one and stick to it, because I kept trying, I kept looking for the right one. And so just having somebody else that we've committed to, okay, this week, they're all going in reminders, or this week, they're all going in Tana. We're just going to stop with everything. Everything new goes in there. I don't need to worry about the backlog yet. So we'll break it into a thing that is, okay, I'm only committing to it for this amount of time. I'm going to test it out, but it's somebody else who you're committing to do it. And it's so much easier to stick to it when you know they're going to ask about it, which is why it's important to have a coach who will ask.
So the answer here is not a particular app, be on this app, and then it will cure everything for you.
No, and I couldn't do that anyway, because one of the things that ties folks with ADHD together is that we have really, really strong preferences, but the preferences are not shared necessarily. There's some general principles. If I see an app that takes 4 taps before you can actually enter something in and you just need to capture it really quick, this is not going to be a workable scenario. Like if you have to go to multiple screens just to enter one thing, I don't see a lot of people with ADHD sticking with it. It's possible if they have another coexisting diagnosis, they might be able to. But like, there's some general principles that we can apply to a task, to a system. And I'll talk about those and I'll say, hey, there's this downside and this upside, because guess what? Every single system you might want has a downside and an upside. There's no perfect one.
ADHD tends to be a common thing for entrepreneurs. No idea why. I mean, I guess we like to take risks. We like the excitement. Who knows?
And willing to. Or some of us are just terrible at working for other people. I don't know that I can ever work for somebody else again. I know my working style. I'm not going to do yours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes it's that we're not good at working for other people. Some folks with ADHD are good at working for other people, but that's going to be a personal difference. But also, we have that risk taking, or we have the idea for something and we want to see it through. I have multiple things that I've started even within my business. I started a community with a partner. So we have an ADHD community for nerdy people. And I also wanted to do a course. And my partner, who is ADHD, so autistic and has ADHD, is highly risk averse and does not have that need to start new things. So they do the community with me and are very steady on that and don't need to go do new things as much as I do.
What's your general advice to overcome procrastination and being impulsive and burning out?
If you need accountability, don't be afraid to go get it, whatever that looks like. And I know entrepreneurs who've used assistants as their accountability, like to say, I'll get this to you by this date. And so they've built that in for themselves. If you need accountability, get it, whether that's co-working, and there's lots of services. Our community does it, but there's also FocusMate, other things. If you need to do work at the same time as somebody else, do it. Like, don't be afraid to use the tools that you actually need to get the thing done. But also a thing I'll see, especially in the early phases of starting something up, is not being able to figure out where to start. And so if you're still struggling with that and you haven't found a way around it on your own, that is a time that I'd talk to a professional like a coach, because some of that overthinking, we need somebody else to help us figure out, okay, what's the first small thing I need to do, instead of trying to do all of it at once or do all of it perfectly. Because that can get in the way. Perfectionism can get in the way. But if you're not there yet where you're ready to talk to somebody, do a mind sweep at least. Like that thing where there's a paper or a whiteboard or iPad with pencil or something, like write out all the things in your mind. Don't keep them in your head. Do the brain vomiting out of all of the thoughts so that you can see them and maybe find a way forward. If you're not in a position where you're like ready to try a coach yet, when in doubt, do a mind sweep. Like, it's a good technique. And that's usually what I'll recommend if somebody's feeling overloaded, like even just that day, is have you had it, given your brain a chance to spew out whatever's clogging it up?
How is the community beneficial in this case when the solution is specific to each person?
There was an aspect, or is an aspect, that people will benefit from coaching, where it's just when you're talking to somebody specifically about your ADHD and specifically about ADHD in general, there's something that you don't get from just reading about it, where you're like, it's not just me. So if like I'll disclose to a client, oh yeah, I've struggled with this too, that I saw that had a really powerful effect on them. And you get that so much faster with more people than you're going to get in once a week coaching. And so when somebody's really struggling with the perfectionism, feeling really bad about themselves and what they've been able to do, a community is one of those places that you will get past that faster by watching other people. The weird thing that baffles folks without ADHD about ADHD is that it's the small things that get us, not the big things. It's the putting my laundry away after I've washed it. It's the dishes cycle. It's those small everyday things that tend to trip us up, not the, oh, I have this grand idea and I'm going to execute on it that I can visualize. It's just those small things. And it feels like I can't do this. What's wrong with me? And if you haven't really talked to other people who are also struggling with the small things, it can be very easy to be super hard on ourselves and not cut ourselves slack, because there definitely is this idea, and I don't know if it's true for people without ADHD. I don't know enough people without ADHD, to be honest. But there's this idea that if you can't do the simple thing, you can't do the harder thing. And that's not true. I can run a company. I cannot be somebody's assistant. Like that is a skill set I do not have. And so I appreciate the people who do help me with those skills that I don't have. It is a different skill set, not a lesser or a better. And it's not the idea that you should be able to work your way up doesn't make any sense in that, at least for us. Which might be another reason we do entrepreneurs. If you can't work your way up in a system because I'm bad at all the stuff in the middle, but I could do the stuff at the top, there's a way around that. You start your own thing.
It's exciting. Entrepreneurship is exciting, and what's nice about it is there's no limit to what you can do. And what you just mentioned is something I really like, that you have the option to build a community or do a course, or you're making those major decisions.
Yeah.
This is the freedom that we have.
I was going to say, sometimes we just have to figure out how to get out of our own way to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Understand our ADHD and how to work with it.
Yeah.
I've had it my entire life. I've never taken any medicine or worked with someone to work around it. It's an interesting journey. I find for myself, it's there's lots of ideas, there's lots of projects. Yes, and sometimes what to prioritize is a major aspect. If everything's important and you want to work on everything, and then it's like, okay, it's too much, it's overwhelming, and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things I'll spot in people sometimes is when the thing they haven't been prioritizing is their own fun or relaxation. I'm not sure how to verbalize those signs when I see them, but like, I'm not sure I can put it into words, but I'll see it sometimes. I'm like, hey, so what are you doing for fun? And sometimes that's what's getting in their way, is that there isn't enough recreating. There's too much I got to do. And at a certain point, our brains are just going to nope out. And so if what you're doing is, I've got all this work to do, why am I scrolling? It might be that you need to do more fun on purpose instead of your brain rebelling and scrolling something all night.
schedule fun in the calendar.
Yeah. You have to make sure you schedule in the fun. Whatever that looks like for you, right? Some people need to do creative projects. Some people need time outdoors. Yeah. Figuring out like what it is you need so that you can actually get it.
Absolutely. Any final words of wisdom, advice for people, for entrepreneurs listening to this?
It really is. If you feel like you need something, don't be afraid to get the tool. There's nothing wrong with you because you need extra accountability, extra verbal processing around a thing, extra help prioritizing. If what you need is accountability to do the fun thing, like, don't be afraid to grab whatever the tool is and use it, no matter what it is, if it works.
I'm happy to hear. This makes me feel good.
Good.
How can people reach out if they want to work with you?
You can find me at conquer.consulting. You can find links to my community, to courses there. I have some just wrapping up the Unstuck Your Tasks right now, but I have some self-paced ones, which of course are not as great for ADHD, but I don't know when I'll do another live one yet. But that's where you can find those things. Newsletter, if you want to get those, I send them about once a month. So I don't want to clutter up inboxes. And I've got some tools there for like project planning and stuff.
This was very helpful. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the Resilient in Business podcast. This show is all about providing valuable insights and inspiring entrepreneurs to keep pushing forward no matter the challenges. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and help us spread the message. See you on the next one.